I'm 99% confident y'all know what the Backrooms is if you clicked on this video. And because of how popular the creepypasta has gotten, there are plenty of internet horror enthusiasts adding in their own creatures, adding new levels. This has opened up the floodgates for those who don't care about making the Backrooms scary, and they started milking it for views and attention. So that's why in this video, I want to show you why adding entities and levels ruined the Backrooms. Within weeks of the original post, users on the r/Backrooms subreddit and 4chan began expanding on the Backrooms concept, adding levels and creatures into the mix. It first started off with levels 1 and 2, keeping it nice and simple. Level 1 is described as a more industrial warehouse area, still kind of abiding to the liminal space aesthetic where it's all empty, kind of dark, dingy and stuff. And level 2 being introduced as a series of long maintenance service tunnels. So soon the Backrooms fandom wiki and the wiki.wiki were created. And these wiki sites were basically created to catalog and organize the hundreds of levels and entities that we'll soon discuss in this video. So with these additions, it basically split the Backrooms community into two. You got those who enjoy the creatures roaming around the musty, dusty yellow safari, and then you got people like me in the camp that we don't really want monsters dropping logs around the Backrooms like wild animals, I really enjoy the idea of having an existential crisis from being trapped in the Backrooms, being all alone in this yellow hellscape, hallucinating and being psychologically tortured on whether or not you are alone. Call me an internet horror snob, I don't care. To be fair, the original 4chan post did foreshadow some otherworldly beings roaming around the Backrooms. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. Now, this whole debate on the two different Backroom versions has been going on ever since the Backrooms were created and people started adding their own shit into it. Even the Backrooms subreddit has so many posts of people talking about, which version of the Backrooms is more scarier, or people just talking about whether they like the monsters or whether they don't like the monsters. I'm sure a lot of people are getting sick and tired of hearing about it, and I'm sorry, this video is going to add more fuel to the flame in this discussion, you know what I'm saying? I'll admit, before making this video, I really didn't know much about this version of the Backrooms with all the different levels and entities, because I enjoyed the more lonely and more liminal atmosphere that the original Backrooms post was insinuating. So let's say you're like me and you're kind of curious about this version of the Backrooms, so you go on Google and you type in Backrooms wiki, click on the first link. Why in the hell are there literally thousands of levels to the Backrooms? Taking a surface level glance through all the levels, you start to notice that a lot of the levels are inspired by the more popular liminal space images that get lumped up into the Backrooms mythos because, I don't know, they just look more liminally, I guess. And if you're chronically online like me, I'm sure you've probably seen these images and recognize them. Like, for example, level 188 is based on that iconic London Holiday Inn image with that indoor courtyard that's surrounded by the walls with windows and stuff. Level 37, we got the pool rooms, which is based on those popular 3D renders of infinite looking indoor pools that are always empty and stuff. Level 10 is basically just the brown version of the Windows XP Bliss wallpaper. And there are also plenty of safe haven levels in case you want to take a break from having an existential crisis from being trapped in the Backrooms. We got level 40, which is basically an infinite Chuck E. Cheese. This is a little bit of foreshadowing, but we're gonna get some particular animal-like animatronics. We also got level 91, which is basically just a house on an island cliff that's nice and quiet and peaceful. Reminds me of those TikToks during the COVID era where it's just a slideshow of people showing off, which bedroom do you want to sleep in, or which house would you want to live in, you know what I'm saying? Nice and peaceful and quiet, no scary shit. Or how about level 6.1, aka the snack rooms, where it's basically an area where you can gorge on whatever food and beverage you desire, infinitely spawning in, and it's also become sort of a hub area for all the other entities to chill out and hang out with their best buds, snacking on whatever the hell they want. Now, in regards to these safe haven levels, I think they kind of ruined the horror of the Backrooms, like, let's say you do get Noclipped into the Backrooms and you're freaking out, running around millions of square miles of the yellow rooms and all that stuff. So if I were to get in that situation, and I know that these levels existed, if you can somehow get your way way into these levels, you're Gucci, bro. You can just stay there and just chill out for however long you can, you know? And I'm not alone in this criticism. A lot of people on Reddit and on the internet in general have criticized these safe haven levels as kind of ruining the horror, you know? But then we move on to the more goofy ass levels. This particular level, level fun, has garnered a good amount of controversy within the Backrooms community. This level is basically the usual infinite amount of bouncy castles with that nice liminal atmosphere. And it was originally a safe haven level until the party goers, yeah, that's what they're called, started to invade it. And these are basically entities that terrorizes anyone who enters this level to have fun, you know? Their version of fun. Like, yeah, have some fun, like you're not trapped in Ringworm City. Now, if we take a look at their wiki page, oh my god!
Adrian, explain our friendship.
There was even drama where the community argued on whether or not to include these party goer entities, and they also had party poopers, and they had this whole war, the fun wars, and you know, it's another big ass rabbit hole. So yeah, people didn't know what to do with this level, and a lot of people were discussing on whether or not to delete it from the wikis. And then we got level 11, which is just a fucking city. A normal ass city with stores. It's got Wi-Fi and even people roaming around it. And sure, maybe this is someone's attempt to interpret modern life as this horrific ordeal that everyone has to handle, you know? But seriously, I guess the scariest part is that you have to get a job. But what part of this is supposed to be scary in like the traditional sense? You ain't alone. There's tons of people minding their own business. There ain't no scary monsters running around trying to feast on your bones. Yeah, the city looks boring as hell to look at, and the best part is you can just fuck off and go to another level if you get bored, because apparently level 11 is a central hub of the Backrooms where you can access any or all of the levels of the Backrooms, you know, in case you want to see more wacky shit or get your rocks off from being chased by freakazoids. And then we also got level 909, where it's just someone trying to be too edgy, where it's basically a maze of tall concrete hallways with this entity called the Rogue that can remove your eyes, remove your ears, your nose, and your tongue and stuff while you're being alive in the whole process. Rips out all your organs and all that. Ooh, super scary. Never seen that one before. Level Ohio. Who the hell is writing this shit, man? Now, because there's so many levels to the Backrooms, and it seems like you can just add whatever level you want, there are plenty of vacant levels which have no data written on them on most of these wikis. So if you're feeling a little creative, feeling a little spooky, hey, why not try your shot at writing your own Backrooms level and make something iconic? Ooh, I feel like so many people nowadays like, oh yeah, I love doing iconic stuff, and I love doing iconic shit. Oh yeah, I did something so iconic, and it's just them going up to the McDonald's cashier asking for a packet of fucking ketchup. Anyways, so in the literal thousands of levels that people have created for this version of the Backrooms, we also got to add in some spooky monsters and entities to reside in them. So some of the more popular entities in the Backrooms include Smilers, which are just disembodied faces with glowing big-ass smiles. Okay, pretty scary. Hounds, which are humanoid creatures with long, messy hair and sharp teeth that crawl on all fours. We also got the party goers I mentioned. We also got some silly entities going around in the Backrooms that don't really cause any harm. For example, we got this cat named Samantha who would give you psychic readings based on what kind of meat you feed her. More cats, we got blub cats that are just round cats and weird shaped looking cats that just kind of chill around. We got a carpet rug that's shaped like a bear. You know, a lot of these silly kinds of entities. I'm sure it's starting to illustrate on how this version of the Backrooms can be sort of inconsistent with the tone, you know? Like, yeah, we got some stuff that's genuinely kind of spooky and terrifying. And you also got a bunch of wacky ass shit just flip-flopping between super silly fun stuff and then super scary as shit, you know, being terrified for your life stuff. And we've also gone to the point where there are people just blatantly ripping off other internet horror concepts that have already been done to death. You know, I'm sure you've noticed there's a lot of smiling entities, and I'm sure scary smiling characters haven't been done to death at this point. You know, I don't need to repeat that again. And then we also got skin stealers who are literally just skinwalkers, but instead of shapeshifting to other people, they just steal the skins off of victims and wear it. Oh man. That's got facelings who are basically just passive Slenderman looking folks you encounter from time to time. They got no faces and all that stuff, but they're not super hostile. I mean, at this point, who isn't in the Backrooms? I want to be surprised if I run into some old high school teachers that turn out to be predators in the Backrooms. The Backrooms has really started to reheat the SCP Foundation's nachos with the abundance of different levels and entities, all with varying levels of quality and varying levels of tone. And much like SCP, anyone could come up with their own entities and levels and contribute their own elements. And because of how much content there is based off all the wikis and stuff you have to look through, it can be kind of overwhelming for someone who wants to genuinely try to read and enjoy this version of the Backrooms. Like seriously, there are several hour-long videos on YouTube with people meticulously explaining all the different entities and levels that exist in the Backrooms and all that. I found a fucking 8-hour video where some dude explained all 100 levels of the Backrooms. With the sheer variety that these entities and levels have, it's a lot more difficult to digest the Backrooms as a piece of internet horror. And I'm sure the examples I just explained earlier showcases the difference between the earlier version, the more liminal horror version of the Backrooms, and the more monster horror focused Backrooms that would soon be more popularized later on. To play devil's advocate here, I'm not trying to shit on people that enjoy the monster horror version of the Backrooms. I'm sure most of the people are passionate about the Backrooms, and we're just excited to expand upon the concept because it is an original and pretty scary concept. It's not to say that there aren't genuinely disturbing entities and levels, and I don't want to discourage people from pursuing this kind of creative endeavor. However, with anything that gets viral on the internet, they're gonna do whatever it takes to milk out those views and attention. God damn, can it get worse?
Let's see who the last monster was, though.
The Backrooms has been slopified so that YouTubers and TikTokers can target little kids in consuming as much Backrooms content as possible. And with the popularity of Kane Pixel's web series, you bet your sweet ass plenty of YouTubers started copycatting that series. And I'll admit it, some of these YouTubers were able to mimic Kane Pixel's aesthetic with the VHS found footage stuff, and the 3D environments look pretty high quality. They're pretty impressive to the point where I wouldn't be surprised if some people were tricked into thinking these are actually Kane Pixels' videos. However, whoever is responsible for making all these videos is doing some straight bullshit. Why the fuck is there Momo-kun slithering around the Backrooms? Why do we have Poppy Playtime characters running around the goddamn Backrooms? We got Unga Bunga and Nextbots, you know, those images that chase you around in Gmod in the Backrooms. Siren Head is a part of the Backrooms. And of course, gotta add the caretaker music to add more spooks to the videos. FNAF characters in the Backrooms. Really optimizing all this so we can get as many kiddies watching this as possible. If you were to just search Backrooms on the YouTube shorts or on TikTok, your eyeballs are just gonna get straight assaulted with these videos. Like, we pretty much got people doing the Elsa gate of internet horror with the Backrooms, adding whatever random ass popular horror character they can and farm and milk the Backrooms as much as possible. Introducing entities and all these other levels have opened Pandora's box. Now we've got all these motherfuckers adding in whatever random horror characters and whatever random liminal looking levels to the Backrooms and making all this slop content on TikTok and YouTube shorts to really farm the Backrooms for what it's worth. And it really sucks to see the Backrooms being used like this because the whole idea of it was so damn interesting and original. I understand most people will see this and see that it's slop, and as long as you're over the age of like 13, you'd probably realize that this is just some brain rot looking ass content to farm views and attention. It's kind of similar to what happened to the SCP Foundation. Once that got mainstream, everything just got slopified. You know, this is literally for kids that foam at the mouth at the sight of any FNAF character, any Poppy Playtime character, and maybe, just maybe, if you feel like being a tweaker, you could try to rationalize having these types of characters in the Backrooms and whatnot. You know, I mean, the whole point of the Backrooms is this infinite dimension dimension where anything's possible. Like, hey, maybe Freddy Fazbear no-clipped into the back rooms and he was trying to run down and clap Chica's cheeks. In conclusion, this is ass. These creators obviously don't give a shit on maintaining the horror of Backrooms. Like, forget about keeping it liminal and scary enough. I got fucking Maui Wowie or whatever the hell that thing is called chasing me down. I'll probably laugh my ass off before I get ripped in half. Like, you know what? I'm getting real tight right now. I just can't get up and stretch my legs or something. Where the hell am I?
Alright, redneck, welcome to Banner World.
What is that? They didn't think someone would bring this into the back rooms. God damn it. Oh God, please help me.
Oh shit, there you are, Funky. I was looking for you, man. You want to play some 2K? I got this.
Sad Satan. You know, you're literally the opposite of who I asked for.
Hey man, that's fucked up, man. You know, I want to come over here and ask you to play 2K. You know, I just got my new PS5 Pro. That shit is expensive, man.
Can you get me out of here?
Well, the only way to get out of here is to use this interdimensional hellish portal that I keep in the zipper.
Alright, well, as long as I don't see any dead kids.